Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Welcome to the Turn Conversations into Conversions webinar, where we will be doing a deep dive into our brand new ad placement, the conversation placement. After the session, I will send out a copy of this deck as well as a recording of the webinar. So no need to screenshot. You can just sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Feel free to ask any of your questions in the Q&A box in Zoom. But after, we also have 10 minutes set aside to answer some of your questions after the session as well. So for the agenda, we will kick it off with an overview and benefits of the new placement. Then we'll go into some instructions and details about the campaign setup. And then we'll share some of our creative best practices. Then we'll review a case study and share how an advertiser found success with this new placement. And then we'll close out with a Q&A. To introduce myself, my name is Kat or Catherine. I'm on the channel marketing team here at Reddit in charge of webinars. And with me, I have two of our highly trained professionals, Will Lee and Tyree Hicks, who helped to build this product from the ground up. So they are the total experts and they will be sharing this information with you today. All right, let's get started.
All right, thank you so much, Kat. Hi, everyone. My name is Will, and I am on the product marketing team here at Reddit. Very excited to be here with you all today. We're talking about conversation placement. We have a lot to go through, so I'm just going to kick us right off. Reddit, as I hope most of you know, is a place where passionate communities can drive action. And that word communities or community, at the heart of it, we really believe is about the communication and the engagement that people have with one another within conversation threads. And so we believe that Reddit is a place where passionate communities can't be found anywhere else. And these communities are full of people who are seeking to be informed by conversations that they trust. I think a lot of you probably know this. I do this all the time. I'll use a search engine to type in a question like, what is the best hiking boot? And then at the end of my question, I'll just add Reddit. And it leads me to, more often than not, a conversation thread about that question. And that leads us to the third point, which, these passionate communities can really drive action and advocacy across many different industries, across many different verticals. And we believe that conversation placement is positioned in a way to help you do just that. So when we think about the platform and how passionate our communities are, and we combine that with the fact that advertisers like yourselves are looking for new ways, innovative ways to leverage that unique power of Reddit, it kind of falls into two core ideas. The first on the left-hand side is the fact that 42% of the average Reddit user's time on our platform is actually spent within a conversation thread. And we'll go into exactly what we mean by conversation thread. But if you could just imagine 42% of your time being spent doing anything on any platform, it's a sizable chunk. And on top of that, 20% of Redditors are only addressable by ads through conversation threads. So there's this 20% out there that if you're not using conversation placement, you haven't yet spoken to. This is pretty much incremental. These are incremental impressions. And we believe that conversation placement is a product that can help you get that incrementality along with that engagement. And so we'll get to the TLDR in a second. But first, before we do that, I want to make sure that we cover a little bit of nomenclature. So when we say feed and we say conversation, and we're going to use those in tandem as well, feed plus conversation or conversation plus feed. But when we talk about feed, we're talking about home, popular. This is the main part of Reddit on the app, on our desktop, where you're scrolling through content at the post level. And in this example, we have this really cute kitten, the apex predator in its natural habitat. And I know, personally speaking, if I'd seen this, in the app, I would have definitely paused and wanted to click on it because I want to know more about it. And I want to see what people are saying about it. And that's where you get pulled into, as a user, into the conversation thread. And so the conversation thread is where users can interact with one another, where they can engage with one another through comments, whether it's by sharing or upvoting, et cetera. So the TLDR here is that we believe advertisers should use the power of Reddit's conversation placement, not only to reach new audiences, but to connect with customers who are highly engaged and highly leaned in on their passions and interests. So like I said before, there's really two big key pluses when using conversation placement. But as you can see on the right-hand side, we have kind of just a quick screenshot of what the actual ad placement literally looks like. At the top, you have the post. This is within a fully formed conversation thread. You have the post, you have the ad, and then before people can get into the comment section where they engage with one another, that is where your ad is shown and delivered. So there's really two ways this placement helps, two core ways this placement helps advertisers. The first is that you're engaging users when they're the most leaned in. They're having these interactions with one another that are quite authentic. They're having compelling discussions. It depends on obviously the topic at hand, but they're engaged, they are leaned in. The second part of this is that conversation placement, like I mentioned, allows you to scale reach to an authentic audience beyond our feed. And one of the things about that 20% I mentioned that are only addressable via conversation placement, these are mostly made up of people who are coming in from search engine results page hits. So these are people who are specifically looking through a search engine and they have a specific topic, that example I gave before about the best hiking shoe. And they use that topic to find their answer via search engine, and those SEO results then show these conversation threads. And so one quick note on top of that is that 92% of users coming from SEO actually land on a conversation thread. So you have these really unique, really leaned in users who are coming in from search engines who specifically are looking to get their questions answered and or dive deeper into a topic that they're interested in. Excuse me. So what are the three core benefits? Well, there's a lot of benefits with conversation placement, but we call it down into three. The first is, as you could probably imagine, driving incremental reach. We've already just, we literally just talked about that for the last three slides. We also talked a little bit about audience value, having more of it. And finally, we believe with those two first benefits, it all leads into stronger full funnel performance. And we recognize that a lot of you on this call coming from all different types of brands, all different types of companies, you all probably have seen a marketing funnel just like this before, maybe internally, and chances are you all are in various stages within the marketing funnel that you're focusing on. So in order to make sure that everyone can kind of understand what is so great about conversation placement, we decided to split out the core USPs by the individual parts of the funnel. So awareness, consideration, and conversion. So when we're talking about awareness and that driving incremental reach part, that extra 20%, on average, more reach than versus just feed, it's all coming in not just from the SEO perspective, but the fact that there are people who literally spend most of their time, or rather a good chunk of their time at 42% on a conversation thread. The second part within the consideration piece of the marketing funnel, we're thinking about audience value. So this is more about the leaned in, engaged nature of the users that are specifically within conversation threads, or rather within the conversation placement. And we've actually seen the results of the beta and the alpha of conversation placement prove some pretty great stats, incrementality when it comes to not just reach, but also things like click-through rates. And finally, stronger full funnel performance. When you combine the first two things of awareness and consideration, and we're seeing the pluses come out of that, there is definitely this effect when awareness and consideration can be driven forward, where it can definitely lead to additional conversions. And so we actually saw that as well from the betas that we ran. We ran two betas, we ran an alpha before that. This whole testing phase took about a year. So this is based off of pretty much a year's worth of data that we tested internally and with our advertisers who participated in the beta. And what we found were lower CPCs, lower CPMs, higher conversion rates. These all happened. And we believe that all these things happened because at the awareness phase, opening up more inventory, as well as driving that inventory towards people who are the most leaned in and engaged, inevitably it all comes back to more cost efficiencies for you as the advertiser. So now we're getting into campaign setup. So this is kind of more of the fun part. Campaign setup. So the conversation placement, it operates pretty similarly to a standard promoted post on feed, but there are specific nuances that we want to make sure that we highlight. So the campaign objectives, platforms, ad group targeting, you can see them all there, and we'll go through a couple of these more specifically. But the one key one that we wanted to share with you is really the video view, or the CPV objective, is unavailable for conversation placement. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use the video format. And actually, the HBO Max example that we showed a couple slides ago, that actually was using a video format, and it did quite well. But the campaign objective CPV is currently unavailable. And part of the reason for that is because video, at the end of the day, with conversation placement, it is not autoplay, it is click to play. And we recognize that a lot of advertisers who are very video first require video to be pretty much like autoplay. So we didn't want to include video view, or rather CPV, as a viable objective for this placement just yet, until we solve that core advertiser challenge. Conversation placement cannot also be used with takeovers at the moment, but we are currently discussing that internally. Breakdown by placement is not supported for specifically app install related metrics. So if you are an app install advertiser and everything under the umbrella of MAI, while app install is still a campaign objective, you can obviously select. The breakdowns that come within the dashboard will not be split by placement. And so if you are focused fully on app install, we highly recommend splitting your campaigns into 2 separate ad groups, which we'll get into in a little bit. And finally, carousel and text only ad formats are not supported with conversation placement. A placeholder will show up if you do not have an image or a video. And on the right-hand side, we have a couple of key callouts. Once this deck is shared in the speaker notes, there is a link to the ad unit specs, which is on our website. And you can check that out for a lot more detail on the specifics around conversation placement ad specs. But just at a very high level, from a headline character count perspective, feed has 300, desktop for conversation 250, 100 for mobile, or MWeb for conversation. So obviously it's a smaller piece of real estate. So your headline needs to be a little bit shorter. And on top of that, we highly recommend using a thumbnail. In the upper right-hand side, we have an example from Adobe. And you can see that the thumbnail is a big part of this ad unit. So having a really clear thumbnail is absolutely paramount. And then same with video. We mentioned before that this will not be autoplay on conversation placement. It will only be click to play. So we highly recommend splitting that out. Now, you might be asking yourselves, how do we split it out versus not split it out? And that is where the ad group targeting section with feed and conversations, and then underneath conversations, you see that term in bold. That is multi-placement targeting, which we'll get into right now. So multi-placement targeting, which has now been added into the Reddit Ads UI and is available for all of our advertisers, is a feature that we launched alongside conversation placement. And we did this because previously your placement was really just feed, right? You really had one choice, which was feed. And now that we're expanding that, multi-placement targeting allows you to target both feed and conversation within one ad group. Now, you'll notice when you're in Reddit Ads UI, this will not be auto-selected, meaning you have to manually opt into this. We did not want this to be an opt-out scenario, meaning making multi-placement targeting the standard just quite yet, because we recognize that our advertisers have a certain way of doing things, and we're introducing a new feature. We believe strongly that multi-placement targeting is the best way to go. A lot of our stats that we shared today already are about conversation and feed when you put them together, whether in separate ad groups or using MPT. The fact that you use both of them together is very critical when thinking about the outcomes that you want to see within your campaigns. But the reason why you use multi-placement targeting in this scenario, which we highly recommend, is because of its ease of use, the fact that you don't have to manage multiple ad groups for your particular campaign, the fact that you can achieve scale by combining or rather consolidating those ad groups to optimize for cost efficiency. And the fact that you can still see KPI breakdowns by placement. Now, I know I said before on the last slide that you couldn't for app install, but for every other objective, for every other KPI you have, KPIs will be split out by placement. So there's another ease of use factor in there as well. Now, for those of you who don't want to use multi-placement targeting, but instead would rather split out your campaigns, this is totally a viable option at this point. What we believe that separate ad group targeting can do for you is obviously provide more cardinality. You have more options, more agency to pull the various levers you want within a Reddit ads UI, as well as if you have specific nuances, right? If you're, like I mentioned, if you're video first, if you are a video first brand, or you have a campaign that is video first, we highly recommend splitting that out using the CPV objective and potentially putting video into feed where autoplay exists and using a static image, or you could use the same video on conversation. Same thing with app install advertisers. If you really care, and we know that we know app install advertisers really care about KPIs broken down by placement, we'd highly recommend creating a separate ad group. So you select feed for one of your ad groups, you select conversations for another of your ad groups, and then they would run in tandem together, and then you'd get those results as well. So this is kind of a quick overview as to why we believe you should be using either separate ad group targeting or multi-placement targeting. We highly recommend using multi-placement targeting if you can. And with that, I think I am passing it off to Tyree.
Thanks, William. And thank you to everyone joining us today. As William mentioned, my name is Tyree Hicks. I'm a senior creative strategist at Karma Lab, Reddit's in-house creative strategy agency. And I'm here to talk to you about conversation placement creative best practices. So let's get started with a few helpful tips you'll want to keep top of mind as you're creating content for conversation ads on Reddit. Number one, clarity is key. Simplify your message and be direct. With the much lower character count than the standard ads served in our feed, it's important to avoid complex narratives. Try to make your pitch quick and effective. Remember that most of the traffic in the comment section is coming from SEO. So they're coming to Reddit with intent to find specific information. And you just have seconds to grab their attention. So make the most of it. Number two, be intentional about your thumbnail imagery. The ad renders in small thumbnail format. So avoid text heavy and or busy images and let your headline do the heavy lifting. Number three, plan ahead to prevent ad fatigue. Creative fatigue may happen sooner with the conversation placement. So make sure you have several alternative headlines and visuals for rotation. Number four, have a mobile first mindset. We've seen that mobile leads to higher CTR performance with conversation ads. So it's definitely something you want to keep top of mind as you develop creatives for this placement. Now, the conversation placement can make an impact no matter what your objectives are, from awareness to conversion. So let's go over some conversation placement, creative, and copy best practices for each stage of the funnel. In the awareness stage, it's important to let people know what you do, how you can benefit your audience. With the limited character count, it's important to hit on these points so that Redditors begin to associate your brand with your offering. During the awareness phase, the objective is to get Redditors to start to make an immediate connection between your brand and its message whenever they encounter your ads. So it's best that brand names and or logos are clearly displayed in the asset itself. But you want to try to avoid using too much text or detailed images due to the size of the thumbnail. It can be hard to read, especially on those mobile devices. Pro tip here, be memorable, make a splash, use attention-grabbing headlines and bright, easily recognizable branding. Now, in the consideration, during the consideration phase, it's a great place to share data, interesting statistics, and any information that clearly demonstrates the value of your product or service. It's also a good time to link out to a video explainer or a product demo to drive further consideration. A pro tip here, speak to your target's pain points and position your brand as the solution. Start your headline copy with a question and tease the answer. This will entice readers to click through to your landing page where you have the space to tell a more complete product or brand story. Now for the conversion phase, which is everyone's favorite phase. For lower funnel advertisers, it's a great place to use promo codes and to promote a sale or special offer to create a sense of urgency. It's important to use a strong CTA and link directly to a page where the customer can convert, example, a sign-up form, product page, or app store. Pro tip here, if you have a discount or promo code, make it Reddit specific. For example, get 40% off at checkout when you use the code $Reddit. Okay, now that we've gone over creative recommendations, I can show you how one of our brand partners, Udemy, has seen success since adding the conversion placement to their Reddit campaign mix. So online learning platform Udemy added Reddit to their marketing strategy as a new channel to drive signups for their ethical hacking course. They ran a multi-placement campaign, meaning they ran our standard promoted posts in the feed and also ran conversation ads. Udemy came to Reddit to tap into our large tech audiences and to boost signups at higher efficiency. By extending their promoted posts to the conversation placement, they were able to tap into unique audiences where they're most engaged, in the comment section. And in the end, this multi-placement approach drove an increase in CTR ROI while decreasing overall CPA. So as you can see, utilizing the conversation placement can be impactful no matter what your objectives are, from spreading awareness to driving conversions. It's a great way to boost efficiency and introduce your brand to unique audiences. Thanks again for joining us today. Now I'll hand it back to Kat for a little Q&A.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We've got some great questions in the chat, so ask them in the Q&A box. Apologies for the video quality that didn't show up when we were doing our tech check. So definitely stay tuned for an email that will have a link to the recording, as well as some really other great goodies. We've got a really fun 1-minute recap of these like great tips for conversation placement. So that will be heading your way also, as well as a Reddit ads post, so that we can recap kind of like the different questions that were asked here, and you can continue to ask your questions on that Reddit ads post. And we will also share some helpful help articles, and the recording, obviously, and the deck. So sorry about the quality, but you'll get all the goodies. But yeah, let's go to some of the questions that we haven't answered. So take a look at the ones that we have answered, because those are awesome too, but feel free to continue to ask. We'll go with this one from Lexi. Is the conversation placement available for pharma brands?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm assuming that this question is coming because pharma requires a great deal of context and terms and conditions attached to your imagery. So my guess is right now, I think, the placement is vertical agnostic, so long as you're following the kind of like regulations and guidelines, that's completely viable. Understandably, it's a smaller ad space, so we have to take that into consideration. But currently speaking, I can't really say, I don't know if Tyree, if there's any pharma brands that are currently using this particular placement, but from a vertical perspective, it's completely agnostic.
Thank you. And just a reminder, let's try to keep the questions focused on the placement that we're talking about today. I know that we have some questions about specific budgets and builds of your campaign, but just to keep on topic for this session, let's focus on that. But Joseph, I see your question. And if you want to ask that question in Reddit ads community, I know someone will be able to answer that for sure. And I'll link that in case you guys need that. Yeah, send in your questions. Another thing that we often hear a lot of questions about is video, and how, like if we want to use conversation placement with video, it is a smaller real estate, but just wanted to bring that up. That's a common question. Maybe you guys are too afraid to ask, so we can talk about that here. So a thing that people ask from time to time is, why can't I target the conversation placement in the video views objective, or like, how can I use my video assets in the conversation placement?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are currently, I think when we started to build conversation placement, we always knew that the real estate would be fairly tight. And you all saw that via a lot of the screenshots. And so it's not that we could never technically do it. It is technically viable to have the CPV objective available for conversation placement. It's more about the feedback that we received from advertisers who said, hey, we really care about video and we want CPV and we want it to autoplay. And those are kind of the prerequisites that need to be passed. And due to the format itself, it can't autoplay, obviously, because it's too small. We've kind of tossed that challenge back to our product eng team and sort of asked them like, hey, can you solve for this? And so they are currently iterating through that. But for now, you can still use the video format. And like I said, there's a lot of clients who have already utilized it. But from a CPV perspective, we're unfortunately at this moment making it so that it's not available for conversation placement.
All right, thank you. Let's see, another question that we often get, a lot of times people are too afraid to ask, so I'll ask this one for you guys. So how do I ensure that the conversation placement is in a brand safe environment? You know, oftentimes this is a question that comes up from time to time with our clients who are possibly not too familiar with Reddit, or, you know, they feel like it's more of like a trolley environment. So how can I make sure that my ad is going to show up in a brand safe environment, especially when it's, you know, kind of in the comments, which can be a scary place, but it isn't always, but yeah.
Totally. No, it's a great question. And it kind of goes back, I think, to Lexi's question as well a little bit, because it's about brand safety, right? So, you know, regardless of what kind of company you work for, what kind of brand you work for, our assumption is that you do care about brand safety. And we've done a lot, not just within our feed, but across our platform to ensure brand safety mechanics and features are available for advertisers. So things like making sure that NSFW content is not adjacent to your ad content. The same exact rules apply actually to conversation placement. And if there's one thing that we didn't necessarily mention in our collateral, but this is true, is that the system, if you think about how it goes and kind of filters through and sort of looks at all the various posts within feed so that your ad shows up next to brand safe content. If you apply that same logic to comments can come and you can filter them in like a variety of different ways. So the system is actually working even harder technically to make sure that the top comment and then the post in and of itself are brand safe. And so all the same applications from a brand safety features perspective on feed apply to conversation. So you can rest assured that those will be the exact same.
All right. Well, we're at time, but thank you, Tyree. Thank you, Will. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate you guys coming out and asking questions, and definitely stay tuned for the links to the Reddit ads post where I will be able to personally help answer any of the questions outstanding. And also we'll also have a cool just the tips video about the conversation placement, the links to the deck, and helpful help articles. But yeah, that's all we've got for today. After this, a survey will pop up. I think I know what some of the suggestions will be for this, but you know, please answer so we can think of other topics that you guys might want to hear about next. And it will be really helpful for us if we could do a quick response and do, yeah, so we can make things better for you guys. All right, well, thanks for your time, and we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.